Welcome to the Haven Hubcast, a place to learn what business leaders, owners, and professionals are doing to navigate and grow in today's market. Hear from industry experts on everything from marketing, leadership, financing, and more. Brought to you by Haven, a co-working space where you can connect, create, and get stuff done.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Haven Hubcast. I'm your host, Nancy Sheed, and I am grinning from ear to ear this morning because I get to chat with Fran Hauser. Fran, welcome. I'm so glad to talk to you today.
Hi, Nancy. I'm so happy to be here.
For those of you not familiar with Fran, she is passionate about leveling the playing field for women. She is an author. She is an angel investor. She is a writer. She is a speaker. She has invested in over 30, is it female-founded companies, Fran? Holy moly.
Yes,
in
that's right.
Consumer tech, CPG, media, publishing. She's also the best-selling author of 2 fantastic books, The Myth of the Nice Girl and Embrace the Work, Love Your Career. We have a lot to talk about, Fran.
Well, I'm just so happy to be starting my day with you, Nancy. I looked at my calendar.
Like everybody should start their day.
A happy dance.
I felt the same way. I've printed like, yeah, this is a good day.
Yay.
Fran, that bio doesn't even sort of, your bio, I feel like, is the highlights. But what I love about your journey and where you are and how you're helping women is it's truly been from an insider perspective, right? Like we were just talking, like, I feel like you have lived this journey and this arc or trajectory of your career that looked like, you know, kind of what you were supposed to do. But as things changed, you changed. And you've just navigated it beautifully, along with sharing what you've learned, bringing people up, and being a leader who's been true to yourself. So I just kind of want to talk through all those arcs of your journey to how you got to here, if that's okay.
Sure. That sounds great.
So way back in the day, I have to always ask a question like, what did you want to be when you grow up? Did you know you wanted to be like a media influencer and an author? Like, what did that look like to you when you were sort of thinking about what your career would be?
Well, you know, it's funny. I loved reading as a child, and I still do. It's my favorite hobby. And I remember thinking about being an author and how exciting that seemed, but also how inaccessible it seemed. Like the idea of like me actually becoming an author, you know, being the daughter of immigrants, being like first in my family to go to college, not having any kind of network. It just seemed like something that was so unattainable. But it was something that I really did want to do just because it was something I enjoyed so much as a child.
Wow.
I enjoyed stories. I enjoyed storytelling. I enjoyed reading. Like I would be the one with my siblings and my cousins where we would put on a skit, you know, and I was always the director. The casting.
Exactly.
And the storytelling. So like, so that's definitely something that I aspired to be. But the other big part of my story as a child was that my parents both had small businesses and they spoke very little English.
Wow.
So I really was like their general manager, their bookkeeper. You know, I did invoices for my dad's business when I was in first grade. Like literally, I was doing the invoices for him. I was their translator. I would help my dad get to like literally drive and navigate to potential clients' homes.
Wow.
So I was very involved with their businesses at a very young age. I learned a lot about cash flow and just like the ins and outs. And so that also, I think, really shaped me, you know, in terms of I'm a businesswoman, I'm an author.
Yes. Right.
And
right.
I'm a businesswoman. Right.
And when you were in college, how did that inform what you wanted to major in or what you were looking for after you majored in your first job?
Yeah. So, you know, when I was in college, again, first in my family to go to college, I majored in public accounting. And the reason I majored in accounting was because, again, like that's what I did as a child. I was always doing the accounting for my parents' businesses. It's all I knew. And also it felt like a very safe career path.
Wait, have we discussed that was my major as well? I can't believe we've never talked about this.
Are you serious?
Totally. I was like, this is a sound business background. This can take you anywhere. And
Yeah.
look at us now with
And
our
look at
accounting
us.
backgrounds.
Right. Talk about pivoting.
Yeah, 100%. So where did that take you? Did that take you to one of the big accounting firms? Did that
It
take
did.
you?
Yeah.
Oh, it
It
did.
took me
Okay.
So I started at Pricewaterhouse. I spent some time there. That's actually where I met my husband. I was at Ernst & Young. So the first 4 years of my career, I was in Big Five.
I was at Deloitte. I was
You were
the one you didn't go to. I was at Deloitte. Anyway. So how did you make your leap? I'm jumping at. So from there, how did you make your jump into media? I just made this assumption you started in media. Fascinating.
No. Isn't that crazy? So I started in public accounting. I then ended up going to work for one of my clients when I was at Ernst & Young. Coca-Cola Bottling was a client. So I went to work there. I worked my way up to director of finance for the New York division. I was 28 years old. I was, I had 140 people reporting in to me. But what I realized was that I wanted to do more. I really saw myself running a business. And I ended up taking a call from an executive recruiter who was filling a role at Moviefone, an early stage media company, which back then was 777 Film and just getting onto the internet. So moviefone.com was just launching.
Yeah.
I took the call. And I think that's a big kind of, I want to make sure that I say that because so often it's just about taking the call, being curious and taking the meeting with the founders. And I talked to them about how, look, I'm really happy I started my career in finance and accounting. I think it gave me a really solid foundation for business, but that I wanted to do more. I wanted to run different departments. I wanted to eventually run, an entire business. And so they committed to me that while they were bringing me on as SVP of finance, they would give me exposure to all different parts of the business. So that was a huge move for me, to leave one of the world's most admired companies to go to work for this very small early stage company. It was a huge risk, but I was very intentional about why I was making that change, right? I knew if I stayed at Coke, I would be squarely on that finance path. And so it was it was really just a wonderful move because the founders, they did give me all these different opportunities to work on different parts of the business. We sold Moviefone to AOL. They retired. I ended up running Moviefone as a division of AOL. So that was my first general management job.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then from there, I was at AOL, then AOL Time Warner merged. So that got me over to Time Inc. And I spent 10 years running different parts of the digital business at Time Inc., which was just incredible. People.com, InStyle.com, basically any digital manifestation of the content I had oversight of.
And I love that you embraced it, right? And I can say this kind of, and I'm not saying telling stories out of school, but being part of a media property when the internet sort of came around, when digital came around, right? So old school publishing was, very apprehensive or territorial. I can remember, not naming any names, but the print staff being mad. We were breaking stories online and, there was a huge culture shift. And I just love that you were kind of on the front end of that, embracing it as opposed to fighting it or embracing it and figuring out how it all could work and being on the edge of that. And how was that also transferring as a woman executive, as a businesswoman, as I think there were obviously more of us working at the time, but how are you embracing change and still sort of bringing people up and being a navigating and leader? And I know you touch upon this in your Myth of the Nice Girl a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's really where I settled into my leadership style, at Time Inc. It really became very clear to me that, as a human being, my values around kindness and compassion and empathy and warmth, I really started owning those as a leader. And also realizing that you don't have to choose between a quality like kindness and a quality like strength. You can be both kind and strong. And that was very much my leadership style. I really embraced the people on my team. I really looked out for them. I championed them. I mentored many of them. And I also had very high expectations of them, and I was very goals driven and very much an operator and somebody who, likes to execute and get things done and, show momentum. And so that really became sort of my brand, this idea of like being able to lead with both kindness and strength. And that's what led to The Myth of the Nice Girl, which was, published 5 years ago now. Do you know April will be the 5-year anniversary?
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. I know.
That's crazy.
So amazing. And look, the other big thing that happened while I was at Time Inc. as the innovator, right? Because I was running digital,
yes.
within this legacy print company, I had the opportunity to meet all of these incredible tech startups that, whether it was Rent the Runway or Foursquare or Flipboard or Google, Facebook, so I had the opportunity to build these relationships with these incredible founders. And it was through that I realized that only 2% of venture capital funding was going to female founders. And that became something that I was really passionate about changing, which really led me to the next phase of my career, startup investing, where I left Time Inc. to launch my own startup investing practice. So that was the other big thing that happened while I was at Time.
Wow. And how has that changed? Because, you just gave that 2% quote, and I know you've been a huge advocate, but from what I understand, that number still hasn't moved too far. Not because you haven't tried and not because there are a lot of initiatives, but what's changed in the startup investing world since you kind of officially jumped in to where we are now and what you're seeing now?
Well, I'm definitely seeing a lot more women get funded. I think the challenge is that the amount of money, the amount of capital that they're bringing in is just so much lower still than where we want it to be. So they might be doing a $250,000 round instead of a $2 million round. So I am seeing a lot more women getting funded, but I think we need to be getting more money. We need to be infusing more capital into those businesses. And frankly, we need a lot more women investing, I think, too. I think that's the other champions. That's the other big part of it.
On both sides, right? 100%. I want to go back, Fran, to I love how you described your leadership style. And that has served you well, both, as you said, when you were in a big corporation, to how did that your leadership style transfer kind of when you went out on your own? And by I say that, like, I call you one of those like wonderful, amazing multi-hyphenate people, right? Like, there's not one word to describe you. How did that leadership style carry you through? And what does that look like now when the teams that you manage look very different and the people that you work with look very different? How does that impact your work now?
Yeah, it's such a different way of working from a team perspective, right? Because when you're in a big corporate job, you have your direct reports and they have their direct reports and they have their direct reports. And, you've got this huge team of people, right? Now it's like, it's much more on kind of a freelancer basis and on a project basis where I pull different people in as I'm working on different projects. And, I have interns but it's remote, right? We're not all working out of the same space. I think the whole like leading with kindness and strength, that's still the case. Whether I'm having a one-on-one Zoom with someone or whether I bring the team together over coffee or dinner, I think that mode of leadership still works for me. I just think I have to make more of an effort to connect with people now, like to make sure that I'm building those connections. It's just harder when, as you know, Nancy, right? Like so much is over Zoom. And I do think, given that this is the Haven podcast that we're doing, this is why I think co-working spaces are so important in terms of like building community and like bringing people together. There's nothing like in real life and FaceTime, with
Yeah.
people. So I really make an effort to build those moments in where I'm like, where I am bringing people together in person, where we're sharing a meal, where we're sitting around a table brainstorming. It just, you got to do that. Like from a relationship perspective, there's nothing like that.
And that's where the magic happens. I mean, I love a good Zoom call, but it is not the same as the water cooler or the having lunch or the taking a walk with a colleague or we got to figure this out kind of scenario.
Yeah.
And Fran, we've talked about being a mentor and bringing others up and raising people up. And I feel like both of your books totally embody that practice. And obviously, and you spoke earlier about wanting to be an author and a writer. How did you figure out like it's time to write the book, or I've got enough here to say a book, or did somebody say to you, you should write a book? I always love hearing what an author's book journey is. And I know both of your books kind of had slightly different stories. So would you share that with us?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the first book, The Myth of the Nice Girl, the idea for the book actually came from one of my best friends who was a former colleague of mine. Her name is Patricia Karpus. And it was while I was working at Time Inc. And she just started the conversation with me by saying, Fran, I'm just so interested in how you lead. You know, like how can you be as nice as you are and still like get to the C-suite? Like she's like, I just don't get it. I think you need to write a book about this. And she was so interested in it. She actually interviewed my direct reports because she wanted to understand like on a daily basis, what were some of the ways that I interacted with them. And she sent me like, there was no Google Docs back then, people. It was a Microsoft
Word attachment.
doc. Yes, exactly. She sent me a Word attachment. And so I have to tell you, Nancy, she was on me for years to write this book because like life kept getting in the way, you know, like I would say to her, okay, I'm going to do it. And then my first son was born, you know, and then my second son, and then I got a promotion. And so I really did not have the capacity to write this book until after I went out on my own. I think it would have been very difficult to write it while I was in the big corporate job. And really the thing that the trigger, you know, that the moment where I was like, okay, I can do this was a blog post that I wrote for Forbes in January of 2016 that was called Nice Girls Finish First. And that blog post went viral. And I started hearing from women all around the country saying basically, I don't know how to show up at work. If I'm too nice, I'm thought of as a pushover. And if I'm too strong, I'm thought of as a bitch. And I don't know how to balance this. And that blog post basically validated the need for the book. It gave me the confidence, like, okay, this isn't just something that I'm seeing in my network, but I'm hearing from all these women around the country. And it just made my book proposal, like it was the opening of my book proposal, the blog post.
Yeah.
Right. Like it made my book proposal so much stronger. And that was the turning point for me where I was like, okay, I have a book. And we wrote the book proposal and we got the deal that fall. So it was like January 2016, we got a book deal that fall. But you have to know, like I had written 3 proposals before this. Do you know what I'm saying? That were on different, all women's leadership, but different topics, and nothing was really sticking. So it was a very long journey to get that first book out. The second book, it was the complete opposite. It was like, we're in the middle of COVID. I'm seeing all of these women struggling. They're burning out. They're not happy. And I really just wanted to create a beautiful guided workbook to help them. And I came up with the idea in it was February of, 2021. And I called Angela Engel at the Collective Book Studio and said, I want to do this. And she's like, I'll do it with you. And we got that book out in a year. It was out by March 2022.
I know. I remember talking to him like, that timeline, Fran, is crazy.
That timeline is crazy. Yeah, crazy. Whereas Myth of the Nice Girl was like 10 years in the making, probably all in.
But I so appreciate you sharing that, because I think for people who, you know, or maybe on the path or trying to figure it out, and you and I've talked about this, like there is no right answer. This is what happens when you write a book, right? Like sometimes the book proposal has 5 different revisions, or there's 5 different book proposals before you get to the one. Sometimes it involves the viral blog post. And then sometimes on the other side, you know what you're doing, you learn your lessons, and you then take away from what you learned from that. And you had the confidence, I'm sure, as well, like, okay, I know how this works. This is what I want to do. I want to do differently. But shout out for bringing both of those there. So that leads us into a little bit about you're not only an author, but you have an expertise in what it takes to get a book out. So how is that now showing up in the work that you're doing, Fran?
Well, I have to tell you, when The Myth of the Nice Girl came out, and it was very successful. It's still successful. It's still being translated into foreign languages, and it was Audible's Best Business Book of the Year in 2018. So because of that, I've had many aspiring authors reach out to me about, they have an idea, they want to write a book, they don't know how to get started, or they want to write a book proposal for a nonfiction book. So I've been doing all of this book development coaching very reactively, I would say, over the last 5 years. I love it. I absolutely love this part of my professional life. And I decided at the end of last year that I want to be much more proactive and much more intentional about helping people get their books out into the world. So this book development coaching is something that I'm really going to lean into. And there's a website that I'm launching. I'm sure it'll be launched by the time this podcast airs.
Okay, we're going to put it in the links.
The website is called bookboundco.com.
Nice.
And all of my services are there. So if anyone is listening who's really been thinking about getting that book out into the world, definitely check out the website. I'd love to hear from you.
We will totally put the links in. So that's bubbling up, and that's a new thing you're working on, but you're still, I kind of also want to bring it back to, you're still doing your startup, investing. I know you're active with a lot of women's and girl empowerment organizations. What does the day in the life of Fran Hauser look like? Or, kind of, do you think of your life in quadrants, or what's kind of keeping Fran busy and forward looking these days, in addition to the book development work?
Yeah, I would say still the startup investing, just because, like you said, I have over 30 companies that I've invested in. So I would say at any given point in time, there are like 3 to 5 founders who need my support in some way.
Nice.
These are women that I've invested in, and they need my support. So that's always like a part of my day. Then there's the speaking. I do a lot of keynote speaking for conferences, for women's ERGs. It's Women's History Month. So I'm doing a lot of speaking this month. So that's still very much a big part of my world. And then the book development coaching, obviously. And, I still do mentoring. I feel like that's like my give back, like I have office hours every Tuesday. I have 3 20-minute slots that I have open, so that when someone reaches out to me saying that they need help, I have my little Calendly link that I can
Here
send
you
to
go.
them.
I'm sure it's booked out for months in advance, Fran. I'm sure it's booked out months in advance. That's such a gift.
Yeah, but it's sometimes I do. It's what you said before, Nancy. Like, I love the multi-hyphenate, the part of kind of how I would describe myself, and because I am in all these different things. But at the end of the day, I feel like I'm helping people, like I'm either helping them launch a business, launch a career, or launch a book. That's kind of how I try to, that's sort of like the common thread.
Yeah. Well,
and it's what really brings me joy.
And then on top of it, you're also a mom and a wife, and there's a whole lot going on at home as well. So we don't want to diminish that as well.
That's a big part of it.
It is. And being able to be present for that in the midst of all the other things. But we're here because of Haven. I knew you before Haven, but it was very exciting to sort of have you sort of come be we've had you to speak. And I know you've been so gracious with your time and being a judge at the Haven Hatch. And I mean, I think you were kind of into women's co-working before Haven even came out. So again, it's that bringing people together. How has co-working changed, or what do you see people, doing differently? I know you and I are big fans of the kind of women-centric co-working spaces. No offense to all the wonderful men in our lives, but there's something in the power, and you've been kind of speaking to women, mentoring women. What do you see in these women-centric spaces, and what's different, and how have they changed, or how are they helping women as opposed to what our lives look like 20 years ago?
Oh gosh, I think, just given how so many of us now are multi-hyphenates, are entrepreneurial, these spaces are more important than ever because, first of all, it's a very safe space. I feel like any of the women's co-working spaces that I visited, over the years, whether it's a sounding board that you're looking for, whether it's brainstorming, I can't even tell you how many times I'll trade, like from a brainstorming perspective, this Jenna Merowitz Turner, back when we were both like members of the wing, she's a personal branding expert and I needed some personal branding help and she was looking for some like fundraising advice. So we just met, we did a 2-hour session where we just helped each other. And I still do that today. So many business opportunities have come out of just meeting different people at these co-working spaces. Annie Evans is the woman who I do most of my co-investing with. I also met her through a women's co-working space. So I just feel like, when I look at so many of the women in my life who I'm collaborating with, who I'm doing business with, I've met them through these co-working spaces.
Wow.
Because I feel like if you're going to join one of these spaces, we all kind of have like the same intention and mindset. And we like being helpful. We like collaborating, and so we're all kind of going into it with the same mindset. So I find that to be really helpful.
Yeah. And you and I talked about, there's just kind of magic that happens that you can't quantify or qualify, but it definitely, I feel like, is a part of the kind of growth and, changing trajectories and, or even businesses, right? In terms of the relationships that get made at these co-working spaces. Fran, I could talk to you for hours. I feel like there are about 6 other episodes we could go into about investing, and we could talk more about books, and we could talk more about empowering women. So maybe this is one of many more, but thank you so much for your time. I can't stress enough that Fran is a great person to know and connect with. So Fran, what's the best way for people to touch base with you or connect?
So Instagram, I'm at Fran_Hauser, and LinkedIn. And then also my website is franhauser.com, and you can sign up for my newsletter.
It's a great newsletter. Selfish plug. It's a fantastic newsletter, beautifully curated.
Thanks for having me.
Oh,
you're the best.
My treat. And we'll put all of these links in the show notes. And Fran, good luck. At this point, we'll say good luck with bookboundco.com as well. That should be up when this airs. So, and happy Women's History Month. I can't imagine a better person to be speaking with and celebrating women. You lead the way. Thank you so much, Fran.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thanks for listening to the Haven Hubcast, a place to learn what business leaders and owners are doing to navigate and grow in today's market. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Haven is a co-working space and virtual community located in the heart of Fairfield County, Connecticut. Haven is a hub for business owners and professionals to connect, create, and get stuff done. Find out more about the Haven community online at haven.com. That's HAYVN.com. Haven Hubcast is produced by Sound Advice Strategies.